Hi, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Global Naija Forum, a platform where we discuss social, economic, and political issues affecting Nigerians and Africans locally and internationally. We held the first virtual conference on the 28th of December 2020. This is the second virtual conference. This conference is showing live on Facebook, so you can join us. The topic of today is re-engineering Nigeria, the role of the People's Constitution. To discuss this issue, I have with me a panel of eminent personalities. I'll go right ahead and introduce them one by one, starting with Tayo Adelaja. Tayo is a public relations consultant, journalist, and politician. He is the publisher of Infotrust, a web-based news platform. He was the flag bearer for National Rescue Movement Party in the 5th of December 2020 election in Lagos State, for Lagos State House of Assembly in Koshofetu constituency. Tayo, I want to welcome you to the program.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. OLAWUNMI ONI BURAIMOH. Wunmi is a woman of many parts. She's a senior lecturer at the Department of English, Faculty of Arts, Lagos State University. She's a TV producer and presenter. She's also the coordinator of an NGO called Women and Girls Empowerment Foundation International. What's more, she's also an actress. Wunmi, you are welcome to the program. Wunmi, are you hearing me? Okay, she's joined us already. The next I have is Uche Akulu. Uche is currently a consultant at an NGO in Munich, Germany. He's also an executive of the African Meeting Center, Munich, Germany. He was vice chairman of the Pan-Africanism Working Group, Munich. From 2011 to 2017, he was an elected member of the Migration Council of the City of Munich, an advisory body to this Munich City Council. Uche, you are welcome. Uche, you are welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, next we have Chido Onuma. Chido is a journalist, author, and rights activist. He is the coordinator of African Center for Media and Information Literacy, Abuja, Nigeria. He holds a PhD in communication and journalism from the Autonomous University of Barcelona, UAB, Spain. He was director of Africa Program, Penos Institute, Washington, DC. He was also an assistant editor of Third World Network's African Agenda magazine. He is the author of many books, among which is Nigeria is Negotiable and We Are All Biafrans. His latest book is Remaking Nigeria, 60 Years, 60 Voices. You are welcome, Chido.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next I have Adebola Shobowale, ABR. Debola is the lead partner at Shobowale, Medidem and Bello, a commercial law firm based in Lagos, Nigeria. He has extensive experience in corporate and commercial law, insolvency, real estate, maritime, labor, matrimonial causes, trust and estates, intellectual property, constitutional and criminal law. Debola is a member of the Nigeria Bar Association, is a member of the Business Recovery and Insolvency Practitioners Association of Nigeria, and also of Insolvency International. Debola, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Dayo Oyebu, and I will go to the conference agenda for today. introducing the topic, re-engineering Nigeria. The next one is we are going to have a discussion about that topic, re-engineering Nigeria. And then we have a short introduction about the Constitution. And then we have a presentation on Nigeria's Constitution. And then we have questions from the panelists, questions from the panelists, and then we have questions from the audience, and then we have the closing remark. I also want to welcome everyone joining us by Zoom and phone. I think someone, okay, Pastor Siri Yerifo, you're welcome. You just joined us. You're welcome, sir. The estimated time for today's conference is just 1 hour, 30 minutes. And I will go straight ahead and start the meeting. Now the topic of the day, re-engineering Nigeria. What is re-engineering? Re-engineering is a management concept, which means a redesign of business processes, its systems and organizational structure to achieve dramatic improvement in business performance. When a company or a corporate entity is not performing well and according to the desires of its stakeholders, re-engineering is usually recommended. Let us look at Nigeria. Nigeria, with a population of about 200 million people, as a geopolitical economic entity, has not performed well or lived up to expectations. Let's take a look at some statistics about Nigeria. One, we have a very fragile economy where oil alone accounts for 80% of Nigeria exports. So any change in the international system affects us a great deal. We've seen what has happened in the past 2-3 years, where the country went into recession, came out of recession, went into recession again. So that is the problem you have when you have a monoproduct economy. The exchange rate, look at the exchange rate at 480 naira to $1. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Nigeria naira 75 kobo, not even up to a naira, was exchanging for $1. 75 kobo for $1. The poverty rate in Nigeria, 40% of Nigerians, about 80 million people, live below the poverty line. Unemployment is at 33%. Healthcare indicators in Nigeria are one of the worst in Africa. Insecurity, terrorism by Boko Haram and armed gangs, kidnapping all over the country. The democracy we practice is too expensive and wasteful. Corruption. Nigeria is number 146 on the corruption index table. Our states, the different states of the federation, they depend mainly on the monthly allocation from the federal government to run.
Before I can even buy anything.
So the other one is that there are different agitations by different groups for self-determination. This is increasing. This is actually increasing. So with all these and many more, one cannot but agree that Nigeria needs re-engineering. There has to be a redesign of how Nigeria is governed and its resources managed if the country will live up to the dreams of its founding fathers and be the land flowing with milk and honey. Re-engineering Nigeria is not optional. It is mandatory and critical. for the continued survival of Nigeria. Now, when I say re-engineering, a lot of people will ask me, what is the difference between re-engineering and restructuring? In the corporate world, re-engineering is the same thing as restructuring. But the only issue is that the way restructuring has been used in Nigeria, most people refer to just the geopolitical restructuring. But most of the time, they don't talk about economy restructuring. Now, if that restructuring that people are proposing is done, I think it will be a death knell for a lot of states, because several of the states, or most of the states, cannot sustain themselves. They generate nothing. They depend solely on the federal government monthly allocation. If there is no allocation for 2 months, they cannot sustain governance. So alongside the geopolitical restructuring, there must be an economic restructuring, whereby we come to a place where we say, every state, what can you produce? And then we see how we can develop those economic basis for the states before we, and it has to go along with everything. And again, I think that when we talk of re-engineering, we have to give a timeline for it. It's not something that can be done suddenly. You have to give it, it's just like restructuring a corporate organization. You give a timeline for you to go through the process. So re-engineering or restructuring, as you may call it, is necessary for Nigeria to survive. I watched a video about a week ago where the executive governor of Edo State was really talking about the problem we have financially, that the federal government or the government is borrowing money to run itself. And oil is running out. When I say running out, I'm saying that a lot of people are shifting from oil to alternative sources. So in the next 20 years, 30 years, we may not really be able to depend on oil again. So we have to look for other sources of income to sustain the country. So I want us to look at this issue very well and, talk into it. And, I just want to have your opinion.
Okay, so how do we start? Do we just...
You can start it. Because,
okay.
because the reason I want to start is because you have been in the movement and the call. You wrote a book on Nigeria is negotiable. So I believe this is, people said restructuring, re-engineering. What we are saying is that we must change the way we are doing things and we must come together at the table to do it. So that's why I said you can kick it off.
Well, thank you, Dayo. I mean, we can talk about the crisis in Nigeria from today till next year, and there'll still be a lot left to be said. We all have been part of the Nigerian process. We know what is going on. And you've done a good job chronicling the problem and explaining how we found ourselves in this situation we are today, which is quite tragic for a country with the kind of human and material and financial resources we have. There is no reason we shouldn't be among the top 10 nations of the world. Well, unfortunately, a combination of factors, religious, political, leadership and all, and a few other things have combined to rob us of that opportunity. So it's painful sometimes to keep talking about the problem because we all know what the problems are. Unfortunately, we are also, and when I say we, probably not referring to the people gathered here. I'm talking about Nigerians from across the length and breadth of the country. We seem not to have a common agreement on how to solve the problem, which then becomes a bigger problem. Yeah, a few weeks ago, I was part of an online conversation that had Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka as the keynote speaker, so to say. And the question I posed to him revolved around nationhood, which for me is at the center of the Nigerian problem. Just to quickly summarize the point, and I started by talking about St. Augustine, who defined a nation as a group of people with a shared interest. Those are not his specific words, but just to paraphrase him, a people who have something they love in common. And I was asking Bishop Kuka, what is it about Nigeria? What is it about Nigerians we can say that we have in common? If we don't have a common agreement, then we labor in vain to adopt a biblical expression. It's almost like a family where the parents, father, mother, brothers, sisters are working at cross purposes. And I like to give this example of, let's say you have a bag of rice in the house, and if the family is united, at the end of the day, we know how much each person can eat. So you could prepare 2 or 3 cups of rice and put it at the dinner table, and everybody would come, serve, and get their fill. But when you have a house where people are suspicious of each other, nobody trusts anybody. So you find people stealing that from that bag of rice because they don't know what the next person is, even though that bag is there and is going to serve everybody and serve them well. But because there is no understanding or agreement how that resource is to be shared, there is no trust or belief that the next person, either the father or mother, brother or sister, is not going to take extra or more than what is due them. So everybody is just stealing the rice, and at the end of the day, we're just watching each other and doing the wrong thing. So that's the situation we find ourselves in Nigeria. We seem not to, even on very critical issues as what constitute terrorism, why people should be condemned for the kind of acts that impact all of us, that put the country in danger and imperil citizens and so on. So we go back to the question of re-engineering and restructuring. And when people ask me, I say the problem of Nigeria is easy. How do we, again, I go back to a phrase or a quote I used in one of my books, Nigeria is negotiable. And it was something, the question that Bola Ige of blessed memory asked many years ago, and said, there are 2 questions that really address the challenge we face as a people. The first question is, do we want to live as a united Nigeria? Do we want to have a united country? Then the question, a corollary to that would be, if we agree to live as a people, under what condition? More than anything else for me, any conversation about the future of Nigeria, every other thing is secondary, whether the economy, education, health. Because if you don't put your house in order, there's no way you can build on it. And these other things are very simple things. If we get the Nigerian question right, in 5 minutes, in 5 years, every other thing will fall in place. We can, 5-10 years, we can build a generation of Nigerians that will, because even in the midst of this tragedy we found ourselves, Nigerians who go out of the country excel. So the problem is not with Nigerians, it's with Nigeria itself. I mean, people like to blame citizens and say, oh, Nigerians are this. Nigerians are what they are because the country That's what the country has given them. That's what the country means to them. So in conclusion, my theory would be that any attempt to tackle the Nigerian problem would necessarily go back to the question of identity, like who we are, what do we want to, what are the common objects of our love? And when I ask this question about nationhood, whether we want to be together as one, it's not in any way indicative of my interest in the country breaking up. In fact, I'm one of those who argue that it's easier to make Nigeria work than for it to break up. You just can't. It's a lot tougher to break up the country than to fix it from the current state we find ourselves. So I don't have all the answers, but it's a question that I think we need to deal with. If we really, that question of who we are as a people, what is it? What kind of nation we want to? Do we want an inclusive nation? Or do we want to build an egalitarian nation? Unless we resolve that question, we can't go anywhere. I'll leave the floor for others to talk.
Okay. Any other comment? Uche, any comment?
I think basically Chidi has more or less, summarized everything, that needs to be said. It's just that I find it interesting, some of the points he raised about what is fundamentally wrong, with the Nigeria as a country. I like to look at most of these questions also more from a Pan-Africanist perspective, because I see myself as a Pan-Africanist, and this issue, this problem, is actually it affects also a lot of other African countries, not just Nigerian problem, but there are a few African countries, quite very few, who are, getting it right. But basically, we need to. There is a dire need for this re-engineering. Let me just summarize it like that, and I guess hopefully, at the end of this our discussion, at least we might have some maybe more ideas about how it's going to be done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to chip in a little more from what the first speaker said. I think re-engineering should also include each and every one of us.
Okay.
As a people, as a citizen, what am I contributing towards the re-engineering of Nigeria as a nation? One of such ideas is this kind of program that we are doing. We have identified that there are so many problems, so many, but can we just pick one and identify the solution? Okay, if we talk about leadership, what is the problem with leadership in Nigeria? How can I, as a person, as a citizen, contribute my quota to the re-engineering of the kind of the quality of leadership we have in Nigeria? Let us take one problem and find a solution that will last us for a long time, so that we don't pick everything, we don't keep reiterating all of these problems and say, okay, his leadership, his constitution is. Let us pick it and discuss it extensively, and let everybody play a part. Unfortunately, most of us have not been playing the right part that we ought to. We leave everything in the hands of these so-called mediocre politicians. most of them are charlatans. And we leave them to carry on the way they do, because of course there are various variables connected to political parties in Nigeria, which some elites don't want to be involved in. But the time is now. If we actually want a re-engineering of Nigeria, of so many things, we all have to be involved. So the citizens have a part to play. You and I have a part to play, and that's why we're doing this. And we need to do more. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Oni. Any other contribution? Okay, so from what Chido said some few minutes ago, he did mention that there has to be a discussion about our existence together as a nation, and what do we really want. And I subscribe to what he said. It is easier, better for us to restructure, re-engineer, than to break apart. It is easier, better than to do that. I think Nigeria as a country can be a great place among the Committee of Nations if we decide to sit down and do the needful. And in order to re-engineer Nigeria, one critical document that we must deal with is Nigeria's constitution. So today our focus will be on Nigeria's constitution and what should be done about it. Because whatever we discuss, whatever it is agreed upon, even when we come together, it must still be, we must still document it in the constitution. And the constitution, the way it is not working for Nigerians. So I will leave you or hand you over to Debola. He's going to do a presentation on the constitution. After that, we are going to take some questions, and then we are going to make some remarks. Thank you. So Debola, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Once again, it's a pleasure to be here. I mean, I'm grateful for the opportunity to also share in this discourse in contributing to the development of Nigeria as a nation. Like everyone has mentioned, I mean, there are several challenges that bug us as a nation. And I think for me, at the center of it all, which is why this discussion is also very important, is the need to look at the Nigeria's constitution. Generally, law is a catalyst. Law is a tool for social, economic, and political development world over. And if you look at any country and you want to understand, you want to understand why that country is progressing or not progressing, then you also need to look at the framework of that country. And the constitution, of course, is always, for every country, is the basic law. It's the law under which structures the country, which determines the framework upon which a country rests. It determines, the framework of the kind of government the country has, the rights and privileges the citizens also would have. And the constitution of every country is is very important. Interestingly, Nigeria has had a very checkered constitutional history, starting from 1914 during the amalgamation. I would like to discuss the constitutional development. We've had about 10 different constitutions as a nation, and I would discuss it post and pre and post independence. Before independence, we had the 1914 Constitution, we had the 1922 Clifford Constitution, the 1946 Richard Constitution, the 1951 Macpherson Constitution, the 1954 Light Constitution, And then after independence, we have had the 1960 Constitution, the 1963 Constitution, the 1979 Constitution. There was a draft Constitution in 1993, which I'm not sure really had any effect before we then had the 1999 Constitution. Pre-independence, the Constitution basically provided for governance of the country through an executive council, a legislative council. At some point, we had a Nigerian council. And then as the country evolved, it also did provide at the time for, of course, elections, even though it was restricted. There was a time in the course of our constitutional development that election was restricted based on earnings. You had to earn at least £100 to be able to vote. But as time went on, and the colonial rulers did see a need to have a constitution that represented the interests of the people, and then different conferences were held at different times, and then this gave rise to constitutional. We had developed we had a more robust constitution. Federalism was adopted at some point. Nigeria operated a regional federal system prior or leading up to independence. At independence, we had the 1960 Constitution, which basically still was an offshoot of the pre-independence Constitution. That Constitution basically provided for the Queen of England was still the head of government, represented by the Governor General, who at the time was Nnamdi Azikiwe, and then we had Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, sorry. And then we had the head of government. Nigeria had a parliamentary system of government then. In 1963, Nigeria became a republic. And of course, we did adopt another constitution that established Nigeria more as a country. At that time, the Queen of England was no longer the head of the country. And then we had some changes to the legislature. The regions became more powerful and were able to self-regulate themselves at the time. And then we also had the judiciary was also more established. The Supreme Court became the Supreme Court in the land as against the Privy Council, which we had before then. This constitution was in force until sometime in 1975, when Murtala Mohammed came into power. He had, at the time he came into power, he was, he was committed to handing over the country back to civilian rule, and then he had also committed to getting a new constitution for Nigeria. Unfortunately, he died, and Obasanjo took over, and I think sometime in 1977, a constitutional committee was again a constitutional committee was set up by Obasanjo, and it was a 49 member committee led by Chief F.R.A. Williams. They were saddled with the responsibility of drafting a constitution. They did come up with a document which we know as the 1979 Constitution. That document was again reviewed by another panel led by Justice Udo Udoma, and then we had the 1979 Constitution. In 1999 again, during the Fourth Republic, Abacha died. Abdulsalam came into power. He was also committed to returning the country back to civil rule, and he did also set up another committee, this time around led by Justice Nikki Toby. They had wild consultations amongst Nigerians, home and abroad, and the consensus at the time was that Nigerians had opted for adoption of the same 1979 Constitution with some changes, and that gave rise to the 1999 Constitution. So basically, the 1999 Constitution, the Constitution was then promulgated into law by the the Provisional Ruling Council. So basically, what you have as the 1999 Constitution is the same as the 1979 Constitution, of course, with a few amendments and introduction. I don't know if at this point I can go ahead to still discuss issues relating to the
yes, you can go ahead, please.
So basically, looking at the 1999 Constitution and looking at it against the topic that we are here to discuss today, which is federalism. I mean, what are the things in the Constitution and how is the Constitution fared in helping us develop as a country, politically, economically, and of course, socially? And what are the restrictions in that Constitution that we can say has hindered our progress as a country? I mean, I'm a lawyer. I like to be very professional and I don't like to be political in my views. But I think one thing that we would all agree on as it relates to the 1999 Constitution is the fact that if you review and look at the 1999 Constitution critically, you would see that even though the Constitution is expressed to support a federal system of government, I mean, in effect, what we have is a unitary system of government. I mean, what we have, the result of what we have in that document is that Nigeria is basically operating a unitary system of government. And this has been the major challenge for us as a country. Chido did talk about our diversity as a nation, and it's important. I mean, it's sad that the Constitution that we have does not recognize that diversity and empower us along the lines of our diversity. Why do I say so? What is federalism? Federalism basically is a system where power is shared between a central government and either a state government or regional government. And when you say power is shared, what it means is that power is actually in when you share power is indeed shared. But what do we have in the 1999 Constitution? I think that what we have is an almighty federal government that has basically taken all the powers and left the states with basically almost nothing to enhance productivity, creativity, and development, and bring development to the people. The major issue for me that I would identify with the 1999 Constitution is contained in part one of the second schedule to the Constitution, which is made pursuant to section 4 of that same Constitution. That's where we have what we call the exclusive list. Now, under that exclusive list, what you have is a list of items that only the federal government can legislate on, and of course, exercise powers on these items. You also have, I mean, following from that exclusive list, you have a concurrent list, and then, of course, anything that's not on the concurrent or legislative list is found is in the residual list, which is left for the states to exercise powers on. But the question is, if you really look at that exclusive list, you ask yourself, these items that the federal government has kept, I mean, that have been delineated for the federal government to exercise powers on, are these items that a federal government or a central government is actually supposed to exercise powers on these items? These items, I mean, the items that have been taken away from the powers from the states is such that the states are left with basically nothing. They are not able to exercise full authority. There's no creativity at that level. There's no so what you have at the end of the day is we have a situation where everybody is forced to depend solely on the federal government, basically, for everything. The government, the system is structured in such a way that the states basically have nothing. So you ask yourself, items, I mean, there are some items on that list, for instance, that if we look at them, I mean, one by one, we start to ask ourselves, what is the federal government, I mean, holding this, what's it called? Why are these items on the exclusive list? Power, for instance, is one of them. I was sharing with someone recently, and I was saying that the layman in Nigeria, to the ordinary man in Nigeria, they don't even understand these things. You have instances where people blame their governors for power failure. They don't have lights. They say, "Oh, we don't have." They blame the governor. Meanwhile, people don't understand that even a governor has. I mean, it's actually very unreasonable that a governor of a state, I mean, a state as an entity, cannot exercise any power in relation, any authority in relation to bringing power to its people. I mean, something as basic as that is in the federal government. You have a system where you have states that have courts, but cannot control prisons. Prisons is basically the exclusive preserve of the federal government. Then what about the natural resources? I mean, states cannot control their resources. All natural resources are controlled by the federal government. You have sensors. I mean, there are a whole lot of lists that if we I mean, items that if we look at, I mean, you begin to wonder what you begin to understand why governance at the state level is limited, and almost, I mean, it's difficult for the governors or the state governments as they are to exercise, I mean, to be creative enough to bring development to the people. There have been arguments also about security. I mean, you find we have a situation where a governor of a state does not have any security, what's it called? There's no security organization within the control of the government. People have advocated, I mean, there have been discussions here and there about creation of state police and all of that. So basically, if we start to, I mean, there are a whole list of items that we can begin to look at one by one. For instance, I mean, registration of business, for instance, you can't, I mean, that's again the exclusive preserve of the federal government. So you at this, I mean, these are things that are contained in this constitution that limits our ability as a people to develop. What we have is a situation where everybody runs to the federal government, and because of the nature of, I mean, the way the federal government is, it's not personal to anybody. So what that's and the system and structure is in such a way that it now promotes bureaucracy, corruption. I mean, it's a free-for-all thing, and nobody's actually interested. The federal government is too far away from the people to actually bring real development to the people. So for me, I mean, in summary, I would say that the biggest problem with the Constitution is the fact that the Constitution itself does not recognize, address, or provide a framework for Nigeria as a people, particularly taking into account our peculiarity and the structure. So the structure that we have, the Constitution is supposed to be our framework, but that structure itself does not support the geopolitical and, I mean, the entire framework of the country. And that's where the problem stems from. So you have, and there's no reason why, like in the United States, I mean, of America, for instance, where, I mean, I believe where true federalism is actually practiced, you find states exercise a lot of powers across different items and I mean, what it is in this state is the law in this state is actually different from the law in another state, and you find that these laws are made to suit the peculiarities of the people. So I mean, the man in New York is different from the man in Alaska, and I mean, so are their laws also. Their laws different, and the laws are made in such a way that it enhances development having regard to the peculiarity of the people and their nature. So and I don't see why we can't have that kind of structure in Nigeria. I don't see why. Yes, I mean we cannot be divided along along geopolitical zones, and then give more power to the zones, whether you want to call it regions, whether you want to call it geopolitical zones, even if it is the states. I mean, give more power to people, allow them exercise more power. The federal government needs to unbundle the powers it's carrying. It's carrying so much and has become very less effective. And the result is what we have in Nigeria as a country as it is. So I think, I mean, for me, that's in a nutshell is what I think is the biggest challenge with the constitution that we have.
Okay. I just want to just one or two comments that I have. You talked about power.
Yes.
I'm just wondering why Lagos State, you generate power in Lagos State and send it to the power grid. And the people in Lagos State will not enjoy the power that they are generating in Lagos State. But just like you said, it's not within the purview of the governor. He doesn't have control over it. In fact, if there's anything, I think states like Lagos, Abuja, those states should be taken off the national grid. They should allow private investors to come in, invest in power, and people will be able to pay for the power. And then you can share power to the less viable states.
Why should we even have something called a national grid?
For heaven's sake.
Why can't the states generate their power?
So
why in year 2021 we still have something called the national grid? I mean, these are some of the challenges that we have.
And then you talk about
it's too centralized.
You talk about the security. So a governor of a state does not have control over the police.
Not at all.
Why should you have federal police? So somebody in Abuja has to decide what happens in Lagos State and has to take instruction from Abuja to take care of what is going on in Lagos State, and the governor does not have the power to do that. Take, for example, the Nigerian railways. I don't see any reason. Anyway, I think maybe they're working on that. Why, whether regionally, we cannot have our own different railway system. Take, for example, Lagos and the whole Southwest have a rail system and connect it to the one from the Southeast, and connect it to the one from the South-South, connect it to the one from the South, North Central, and let everything work together. So just like you said, these documents that we have, the 1999 Constitution, something has to be done to it, because the federal government is carrying so much load that it has become ineffective. Why should everybody go to Abuja every month to go and collect allocation? A lot of the states have resources to sustain themselves if only they would develop it. But just like you said, resources in those states are under the federal government. So you find a state like Ondo State. I think it has the second or the third largest deposit of bitumen in the world.
Yeah.
But that is subject to the federal government. If Ondo State decides or is mining the bitumen in Ondo State, they have no reason to go to the federal government to go and get money. Lagos State, too. Take, for example, Ogun State. Ogun State, Ondo State, they have a large deposit of oil and gas. But as long as everything has to reside in the federal government, and everybody has to go to Abuja to get permission to do this on that or that. And it depends on who you know before you can get those things. Those things cannot move forward.
Sorry
Anyway.
to continue.
Yeah.
Dayo, after listening to our discussion tonight, and what I really see in our discussion from what Barrister Adebola told us is that I think people are really not talking about it much, is that we need to visit the exclusive list in the Constitution. The exclusive list is what gives the federal government the right over all of these things we are discussing. Talk about NEPA, talk about whatever you want to talk about. Most of them are in the exclusive list. For instance, now, let me give you just a simple example. Roads. They'll tell you in my own state, or let's say Lagos, for instance, they say this road is federal government road, that one is federal government road, this is a state road. And unfortunately, when the federal road got spoiled, nothing the state government will be able to do about it. They will tell you it's not our road, it's federal government road. And because the federal government is far, I mean, it's just an example that the exclusive list should be visited. And this list, some of those things should now be returned back to the states. They should be taken out of exclusive list. Unfortunately, very unfortunate, those people we have at the House of Assembly, House of Rep and Senate, are just there for themselves, which is another major issue we have. Since 1999 to date, I don't know what their impact has been. As much as they are, I have not really felt their impact. These are some of those things they ought to have visited and work on. Thank you.
You know, the interesting thing is that they won't do that because it's not just the exclusive list that actually you need to take out items from. Even some items on the concurrent list, the federal government has no business sharing those power on those items, authority or power on those items with the state government. Now, the interesting thing is that if you leave it to the legislators to do this, they won't, because by the time you unbundle the federal government, we don't need that kind of large National Assembly anymore. And so what it means is that you're effectively taking away their jobs. So there's actually not, I don't see any will from that angle or from that quarter to do what is right. Every day, I'm sure they are aware. They are happy with the way it is to exercise these oversight functions and do all of these things, that all these bureaucratic things that they do to the detriment of the people. So I doubt that you would get any will from there to get these things done.
But the question I would like to ask you, Debola, is what is the process of altering the Constitution? Now we have found ourselves in this situation. What can Nigerians do?
Let me ask a question. Okay, Uche.
Okay.
I wanted to, because I think it should be quite clear to us now that, the issue is not even changing the exclusive or concurrent list or things like that. The issue is, should we carry on with this constitution? Because this was a constitution that was not actually, it was not brought to existence by the will of the people. This was a constitution that was, foisted on us by, some military chaps, So I don't think it helps to even be talking about, what are we going to do? What are we going to change in the exclusive list, or what are we going to do with the concurrent list? The issue should be, why should we continue to be working with this constitution?
Okay, so in addition to, maybe before Debola answers, in addition to what Uche said, I'm one of those who share the perspective that we need a brand new constitution, however we defined it, and that would be a necessary fallout of what we have agreed to be as a nation. What kind of federation? We need to decide the kind of federation we want to have. There are different types of federation. The federation you have in Canada, the federation you have in the United States, the federation you have in Spain, for example, where the regions have autonomous power almost to the point of secession if they want to leave. So all those things are things we need to have a conversation. I go back to my earlier point about the problem with Nigeria. The problem with Nigeria is that we haven't come to an agreement or an understanding. Our problem basically is we haven't taken time to talk, to discuss. The British did a lot of talking on our behalf and handed us a document at independence, which we didn't have time, to look at what kind of nation, as one of our friends will call it, the contraption that they handed out to us. We didn't sit down to recreate Nigeria in the image of the emergent Nigerians post-independence. So unless we go back to that fundamental, unless we go back to that basic things, we can keep playing around the current situation and nothing is going to happen. But even more importantly is the point that I think part of the challenge, and Dr. Buraimoh hinted this, the whole question of leadership. If we have the character, or the men who have the character to lead their people, the challenge we face as a country would have been half solved. You elect these leaders who come to power as state governors. Even as fundamentally flawed as the current constitution is, there are a few things that we can do. And a senior advocate of Nigeria who is very active politically has had to call me back and forth on this thing. And he will say, oh, Chido, look, these governors, even though the issue of aviation is in the exclusive list, there are state governments that have built, what's it called, their own airports. Imo State, for example. When you challenge the federal government, which is what we elect these leaders, and Tayo talked about why these people do. I think Delta State, Akwa Ibom State, I know, I'm not sure of Delta. I think Delta State has built their own airport. At the end of the day, these airports will still operate within the framework of the National Civil Aviation Authority, but that's another argument. But so Akwa Ibom State, for example, the last time I visited Uyo a few years ago, they collected 2 different charges at the airport. They collected which was really painful. So at the end of the day, imagine if you didn't have the money. We paid almost 3,000, apart from the crazy ticket fee. When we got to the airport, they said 900 Naira was the Federal Civil Aviation Authority, and they gave us some funny receipt. Then when we passed that counter, before we went to the boarding area, they charged us another 2,000 Naira to say that's for the local Akwa Ibom State airport. Anyway, so there are creative ways in which states can raise money and do their things, even with the overbearing tendencies of the government. Then quickly, 2 other points. The issue of, let's say, arms. If I'm not mistaken, every Nigerian has the right in the sense that you can apply to bear arms. You can, Debola can correct me here, I'm not a lawyer. If you apply, they can. So in that sense, it means that the state governments can empower their own state security through that means. They don't need any.
I think the law is that you can only not there's a category of arms that citizens can apply to have, and it's only for, and the license that will be given is only for hunting purposes.
Okay, for hunting purposes. Okay, so maybe that's the extreme, but let's say the issue of murder, my understanding is that it's an offense that attorney generals in the states can prosecute.
Yes.
But where have you seen it? Any murder committed in any state, maybe because it's the police that is handling it, at the end of the day, it's the attorney general at the center. So Lagos State, even still, when there are murder cases in Lagos or Imo, and so you still have to, why is it that the state's attorney generals are not dealing with those? What prevents them from handling issues of murder in the case? So the point I'm making is that building a nation, building a society that works for all of us needs the contribution of everybody. If certain individuals play their role, we need to keep pushing the frontiers, challenging this system. No matter how, we can't sit down today and define how this country is going to be in 10, 20, 50 years. Even if we have a brand new constitution, we realize that in 50 years' time, the realities have changed. And the Nigerians who will live here, if we still have a country called Nigeria in 50 years, will have to deal with different reality. I'm even worried that within the present system, under the circumstance we find ourselves, that our leaders, so-called, are not rising up to the occasion, are not, challenging the system enough so that we can, at the end of the day, refine it in such a way that will benefit all of us.
Okay. Debola, I want to ask, so you are going to ask, there are two questions you are going to help us answer. One is the issue of if we want to change the constitution, if we want to revise the constitution, what's the process? Number two, I know there has been several constitutional conferences, and I don't know what they've done so far, because if these issues are so glaring, why didn't they fix it all this while? Thank you.
Okay, I think the first question, interestingly, the Constitution, I mean, the Constitution only provides for amendment, and I think that is contained in Section 9 of the Constitution, where it provides for two procedures for amendment of anything, any provision of the Constitution. There's the difference being that if the amendment relates to creation of states or anything that is related to Chapter 4 of the Constitution, which has, of course, relates to fundamental rights, then in that instance, you need 4/5 of the National Assembly, a resolution passed by 4/5 of the National Assembly, and then supported by 2/3 of the supported by resolution passed by 2/3 of the houses of assembly of the 36 states, and then for any other thing you need 2/3 to pass, and then in both instances the president will assent to the amendment, and in the event where he refuses to give his assent, then its power can be also vetoed by the National Assembly. But the Constitution does not provide for, it doesn't make any provision for jettisoning the Constitution itself as a whole and then adopting a brand new Constitution. I think that's, like we have been discussing, is going to come more from the will of the people, the leaders, and I think that part of the things we don't do enough as a country. I mean, for me, I still believe that we can. There are two approaches to it. So one is the short term. What are the things that we can do, like Chido identified within the framework of the Constitution that we have to make things better? And then, of course, the long term is, look, we need to jettison this Constitution as a whole and then come up with a brand new Constitution that will, of course, reflect the will of the people, and then address our peculiarities and our evolution as a country. But I think that one of the things basically what I see so far is that the authority for making any law or taking decisions in relation to laws in Nigeria still rests with the National Assembly. We all, every constituency, every local government, we have representatives in the National Assembly. But whilst Nigerians are always focused on the executive and sometimes judiciary in terms of making demands for better governance, I find that we place lesser demands on our legislators. And as a matter of fact, they are actually very critical to ensuring that we have a better framework to ensure development in the nation. We need, as a people, we need to call our respective lawmakers to order and make, I think for me, that the advocacy can start from there. The lawmakers can, they are the ones that are statutorily saddled with the responsibility of lawmaking. And I think that as a people, we need to do more in terms of tasking them to do what is right for development of the nation. There are a lot of avenues that we can adopt. You can have a constitutional conference, a proper constitutional conference. There have been calls for sovereign national conference, blah 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 blah, all of that. There are procedures, established procedures, referendums, and all of that we can have to ensure that the views of the people are taken into account in ensuring that we review the entire country, review the entire structure, review the provisions of the Constitution, come up with, because it's not just enough to say you want to take away some of the items on the exclusive list and give them to the states. The question is, are the states even positioned enough? Are they properly structured for them to be able to assume these responsibilities and bring development to the people? These are the things we need to look at holistically in ensuring that we have a brand new constitution that can support Nigeria. So, it still comes back to the people to put pressure on our elected leaders to ensure that they do what is right, to call for a review of the Constitution.
Okay. There are two questions that's actually bothering me, because the state governors know that the Constitution as it is does not allow them to function as they ought to because of what is on the exclusive list and the rest. Why did the state governors not compel the lawmakers from their states, which are in the House, which are in the Federal House of Assembly, to change these laws?
I would say it's political will. It's
political will on the side of the governors, or on the side of the, because the reason I asked that is because the way you've explained it, if the state houses of assembly agree that these laws should be changed, and it comes to the Federal House of Assembly and they agree to it, maybe 2/3, I don't know what you said. If they all agree to it, the laws can be changed.
No, certainly. I think between the state houses of assembly and the National Assembly, I think they can do something they can take steps, even together with the executive, to ensure that we have a review of the Constitution and then we have a brand new Constitution. But like I say, the problem we find in Nigeria, that the problem, it's always easy to identify the problem, but the challenge is always the political will to do what is right. It's lacking for some reason. I don't know whether people are benefiting from the status quo, and they're not. There's no sincerity to ensure that we have better governance in Nigeria. But what we find is political will is lacking. I'm sure that in little things. In some instances, you pass a road every day, and then there's always a bottleneck in the morning, and then you get to the point and you see that there's just one pothole that is causing a whole lot of traffic. Just for somebody to come and fix it, and I mean, even the person who is saddled with the responsibility of getting that thing done will pass there and just take his eyes away. So if something as little as that, I mean, you don't have anybody actually taking responsibility for things within the purview of their own powers, everyday simple things that they should do. How do we expect that these same people, these same leaders will then want to do something that is right in the interest of the people?
Okay.
I think it's the kind of leaders that we have.
Okay. Tayo Adelaja, you have something to say.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be in this virtual conference. What you are talking about the National Assembly, how many of our representatives in Abuja do the grassroots people have access to? Once they are elected, you don't find them anymore. They're out of the state. In fact, they are much more in Abuja. And talking about the state governor, discussing with them so that maybe some of these constitutional aspects that limit their power can be, maybe changed or whatever. Let me say this from my own experience is that most of these people in House of Rep and Senate, most of them are not even in cordial relationship with their state governors. And even when they have a bill they want to push in the House of Assembly, you still have to lobby. And in lobbying, the Assembly is so positioned to favor the North. Whatever you want to push at the National Assembly, except the North agree with that position, that's when it can go through. Outside that, the whole of South-South, South-East, South-West cannot pull the 2/3 required for the change. So we have to look at that dynamics too.
Okay, Uche, you want to say something?
Yes. I find it very, very important what Barrister Shobowale said, but it's, and, I quite agree, that would have been a way, because he said that the people, it comes down to the people who elected these representatives. It is the duty of the people to demand from the representatives that they do their jobs, that they pass a motion or a bill in the House, whether it is state or federal, that for a constitutional conference, for instance. But, it becomes very, very obvious here that the majority of our people do not even understand that this is how politics works. You understand? That if we elect these people and that we need to keep on, reminding them, pressuring them, whether it is by sitting down together as a group of people to write petitions or to, go to, their constituency offices and, protest and, the people have to, understand and learn, that look, this is how democracy works. They have to keep the representatives on their toes because the representatives are there to represent the people. But it's like this knowledge is lacking. It's a fundamental knowledge which is lacking in Nigeria.
They can even be recalled. The people can actually even, if you have a lawmaker that is looking, you can even recall.
There's provision to even recall representatives, and this is a problem because, from what I have seen in the Western world, and that is what happens, people go to their representatives' office in the communities there, in the cities, whatever, and tell them or even write letters and, you know, send to them that, look, this policy and so policy, we don't like it, you know, because these people are they are representing the people. But it's like that realization, that knowledge is lacking, totally lacking in Nigeria. And that is where we should now be talking about, look, how do we educate people? Because you know, I mean, we are in a democracy and we want to continue in a democracy, you know. How do we, you know, ginger people up to, you know, to wake them up to realize that, look, they also have a duty? Because it's very easy to sit down and, you know, blame the executive every day from 24 hours of the day, you know. But what are we really doing? Do we really realize that we have a role to play in making sure that things work? Because, you know, we have a stake. Because like the question, Dayo, you put the question that, you know, why is it that the governors are not doing it? You see, the governors, the stake that the governors have in the Nigerian project, you know, it's not as much as the stake that the people, the common people have, you know, because the governor, you know, many of these governors are, they're having a good time, you know, they, you know, dipping their hands into the national till or the state till, you know, so many of them are not even there to serve the people. It is the people that have to, you know, keep them on their toes and make them understand that they are there to work for them. So it is not even a job of the governors, it's a job of the people. And the question is, you know, the challenge is, how do the people become politically conscious?
Okay. Uche, from our discussion, it all boils down to the people. And I think one of the major problems we have with Nigeria is because the educated, the elite, so to say, are not helping matters. What they are interested in is just to earn a living. Because looking at it now, it all boils down to the Nigerian citizens. That if we as a people can mandate, can demand from our representatives that this is what we want done, they will do it. But just like, I think Tayo, how many of us even know our representatives? Somebody says, oh, is the what's it called? Is the state, is in Lagos State House of Assembly. He lives, he's representing so and so area. Nobody knows him. Nobody knows his house. Maybe he's even living somewhere away from even the place he's representing. So it all boils down to the Nigerian people. I think, just like we have said, is that a lot of us are waiting for them to do something. What I see in Western nations is that people are the one demanding for it. They are the one demanding for accountability, demanding for good governance. And anyone who messes up, they know how to deal with the person. It is the people. Apart from the laws, but the people are the ones who keep you on your toes. They will write letters. They will come to your office. They will write petitions because they want good governance. So it all boils down to the Nigerian people. I mean, it's also like what Dr. Oni said, that we Nigerians, if you want Nigeria to change, we are the people who must demand it from our leaders. You see a man who just became a local government chairman, and it's like his life has changed forever. He's riding the best car, he's building houses, and nobody calls to question, where did you get this money? We know when you are campaigning, you didn't have this money. Yet the roads that we pass by in the local government is filled or is full of potholes. So it all comes down to the people. It all comes down to Nigerians. For Nigeria to change, we Nigerians must demand accountability. If we demand a change to the constitution that we presently have, and we place a demand on our different states of our House of Assemblies, because even when you say the North, just like you said, one of the major reasons too is ignorance. I think a lot of our people don't even know how this thing works. So they just elect somebody and expect him to serve them. But that is not how things work. In a democracy, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Any other comments? Because we are rounding up very soon so that we can keep to our time. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for joining us for this conference. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you again. If you want us to, if you are joining us for the first time, if you want us to add you to our mailing list, you can send us email at Global Naija Forum 1875@aol.com. Global Naija Forum 1875@aol.com. You can send us an email so that we can update you with whatever is going on and when we are going to have our next conference. I hope you will join us again in our next conference in July, where we'll discuss another interesting topic. I want to thank my discussants, Uche, Debola, Chido, Tayo, Dr. Brahima. I thank you very much for taking out your time to discuss this very issue. It shows that we are passionate about Nigeria. And it's our prayer that Nigeria will be better for everybody so that those who are coming behind can see a place to stay. God bless you.
Thank you.
And farewell.
Thanks, guys. See you next time. It's been a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Mayokun. Thank you, Osai Yahweh Omore. Thank you, Isaiah Odima Oji. Thank you, Mayokun. Thank you, Mama Olojola. Thank you, Pastor Siri Yerifo. And every other person joining us by Facebook. Thank you very much. We hope you join us again in our July conference. God bless you. Thank you.